Hello, and welcome to Reanimated. This is the podcast about all things zombie. I am Stuart. I'm one host. Another host is H.A. Conrad.
Hello.
H.A.
Hello.
I'm going to step on you every time you try to introduce yourself. Hello.
Cool. Hello.
Hey, we're back for a couple more episodes of I don't know what do we call this? Season 11.2.
Yeah, I don't even know what it is.
Season 11 2/3.
Yeah.
So picking up this time with episodes 11 and 12, which include a Michael Cudlitz directed episode in number 11. So that's going to be interesting in Rogue Element.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we have a couple little pieces of news too to get to before we get there. So why don't we go ahead and do you want to start talking about the sadness, AJ?
Sure.
Unless you want to catch up about anything else before.
No. I guess we can get into this. But the sadness, we talked about this a little bit before, but this is a film that was shot in Taiwan by Canadian director Rob Jabaz or Habaz. I'm not sure which it is actually. And a little bit of a twist on, I mean, some of the sort of outtakes and scenes of this look really good. Just from a filming point of view, because they use Taiwan to their best advantage. It looks honestly pretty scary. But the one sort of tweak in this zombie mythology is that it's not, they are definitely like murdering and killing people, but there's also like a sexual drive piece to this too that's kind of disturbing. Like they describe them as hedonistic sexual zombies, which freaks me out a lot, honestly. And that is going to be so Shudder has acquired this, so it will be available there fairly soon, I believe, right?
Does it lay it out in the collider?
I don't know that it said the exact date, but anyway, I think maybe we will be watching this, but I'll admit to you that this kind of freaks me out already.
It's going to be out in May, so in May 12th.
Oh, okay, yep.
It's this trailer when we first watched it was disturbing. There was some
exactly.
like pretty sketchy, like leering businessman zombies and subways and just a lot of there were visuals that really stuck with you. Yeah,
so the trailer gave me sort of pause. So I have a feeling that it's going to be a pretty freaky deaky film, but we'll get to that. You know what? I think part of it is that it's they definitely give off like a possessed, like somehow being a possessed situation, and you know how I feel about possession. So you know, it felt more like demonic possession than it does zombie genre to me, but we'll have to kind of see. I may not be able to get through the whole thing, but this remains to be seen. And then the other little bit of news that we found, I think everybody remembers how much we loved One Cut of the Dead. And I guess I missed that this was happening. I did not realize that they were doing a remake of this called Final Cut, French Z comme Z or Z comme Z. I don't even know how you say Z in French. Anyway, but it's a French film. And it is going to be premiering at the Cannes Film Festival on May 17th. And I don't know how I feel about this because I actually really loved One Cut of the Dead, and I kind of am not psyched that they're remaking it.
No, I have an immediate negative reaction too. Like, how dare you?
Kind of, yeah. I had the same reaction. So I think we're on the same page there. Because I thought that it was really brilliant what they did.
It was unique, and then if you recreate it, it will no longer be unique.
Right. So anyway, I guess we'll have to. I of course am going to be curious and check it out, but that is coming out pretty soon. So maybe we'll have to see if we want to criticize it or compare it to the original.
I guess it depends how close they shoot to the original. We'll see.
Yeah.
And additionally, aside from those two, which are both, I guess not 100% exciting for us, but we'll give them a shake at least. Dead in the Water premiered on April 10th, which was the latest Fear the Walking Dead web product. This was this is really them getting their money's worth out of that gosh darn USS Pennsylvania set on Fear the Walking Dead, showing the before the fall storyline following Riley, who we knew was a crew member on board that ship. And it's it's not like the other webisodes that they've done on the show before, which were usually like each episode is like a minute long, and then you put them together and you have like 15 minutes of content, like the airplane one. And there was one about a tunnel into Mexico, I think. Those were pretty well done. I mean, those were done under the former showrunner Dave Erickson. And this one is actually just like, in theory, it's like 6 episodes, but it was all released together. And altogether, it's about 50 minutes long. So it's like a full episode of Fear the Walking Dead when you add it all up.
Well, I have not yet checked it out, so I will have to do that. Somehow it was on my list of things to do this week. I just didn't get to it because instead I ended up binge watching a lot more of this season than I probably should have. I just couldn't wait. And hopefully I won't blend together anything, although my mind's a sieve, so I think it will still seem new to me when when I watch the episodes as we're reviewing them. But
it
what do
wasn't
you think? What did
terrible.
you think? So was it better actually than what we watched in that season? I mean,
Yeah, I think it was because it was focused on a smaller version of the story that they're trying to tell. Like,
all
and they
right.
weren't all spread out, and there was no Althea. Immediately
Oh,
gets
thank
like
gosh.
5% better, right?
Mhm.
But it wasn't without its share of issues and problems, and like the forgetful way that they seem to write dialogue. I don't know. Do you remember a line that Riley says to Teddy last season of Fear the Walking Dead, where he's like, "I've I've stopped one of these things before. They don't have the technical know-how to do it."
Right.
Do you remember him saying that to Teddy?
Vaguely, yes.
It was to me like this trigger for how cool the webisode could be. Like we're gonna see him like doing a Hunt for Red October style, or no, that's not the right movie, but one of those like nuclear submarine movie things where they're like, I'm not going to turn the key, sort of things, or I'm
Oh
going
yeah.
to turn off the nuclear missiles before you can send them. That line, yeah, I don't know if I can. I think I could just tell you, but it's like it's not. They don't deliver on the promise of him saying that to Teddy in the webisode. It's kind of weird. I mean, they almost do, but then they don't. So it's very to me, that's like pure Shambliss Goldberg, where
Yeah, yeah.
they forget, I guess, that they put a line of dialogue into for Riley that he then does not live up to. And I'm just like,
There
yep,
it is.
there it
There it
is
is.
again. So uh,
On brand at least, I suppose, right?
on brand is as disappointing as that is. Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, Dead in the Water for folks who want to check it out and are still, up for things that are Fear of the Walking Dead, which apparently I was. I'm kind of surprised myself by how quickly I went to find it, and it's on AMC Plus.
I'm surprised too. I am.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was folding laundry, and I was like, "What else am I going to do at this time?"
Well, you didn't binge watch the rest of the season, and
I have been
not bad like me. You've been
I've been a
very good. I
good
just
boy.
couldn't. I couldn't. But I think we should jump into these episodes because there's some interesting stuff to chat about.
Yeah. So Rogue
Rogue
Element.
Rogue Element, Mr. Michael Cudlitz. And this is a Eugene focused episode, and um as you may remember, we haven't seen a lot of him. This is like kind of like we just this is all Eugene all the time. This is a Eugene and Stephanie episode specifically. And it's good to see him. I'll admit, like the way that they were sort of framing this, there was part of me that was like, oh, are they going to kill off him at the end of this episode or something?
Oh, I was 100% convinced that they were
I
going to
was
kill him
pretty,
off.
it felt that way, right? Because anytime they do this much sort of like kind of sentimentality, or they have like, especially him, which he's like always been a bit of an odd soul. And, you know, we've all had a very skeptical view of his Stephanie relationship and the things that he does related to said relationship. And it just doesn't seem like it feels like there was like the other shoe was going to drop, and it did obviously in this episode. But they also have him kind of evolving a little bit. So this is the thing. It's like he's all in it with Stephanie, and giving her the key to his apartment. professing like all of his love. They're all like, you know, in bed together and stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
I will
and
say
so
that I watched this one twice because by the end, after the twist, right?
yeah,
I went back to watch this scene specifically because I think it's better to talk about this whole episode as if like, we know what's happening
yeah, and so big
because
spoiler. So we should say big spoiler
big
if you haven't
spoilers
seen
coming of,
this.
yeah.
And I honestly, they're big spoilers, but I don't feel like they're unexpected spoilers. So we can talk about that.
Yeah, there were some clues, but they weren't like super overt.
Right.
Like the early scene with Max and the ice cream was noteworthy, right? I remember seeing that happen and
And
him.
we even talked about how weird it was.
Yeah.
Because their interaction was so bizarre. And now it makes sense. But
So we knew something was going on there, but we just didn't know what. And now it's like, oh yeah, but so Stephanie not being a person, like Stephanie being actually like, it's not Max, it's not Shira, it's just a made up, it's like Max's mother's name. That revelation in this episode is a big deal. And it was worth to me going back to watch the scene in the bedroom where, because Hornsby's like, look, when you started to escalate, we tried to get out of there as fast as we could. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? The woman playing Shira does do a really subtle and good job of looking a little shocked and scared when he says, I love you. But at the same time, she's in his bed. Like they just slept together overnight. She's reading his manuscript. Like they've been dialing this relationship up. Where did they think it was going is like, to me, the big question.
Right. And I had the same question. Weirdly, not weirdly, but not shockingly, I did the same thing. I went back and I was like, did I like, and I think that that's part of honestly, the manipulation and why there's such a betrayal here. But it also feels, even what Hornsby is saying doesn't feel like it washes, because I agree with you. It's like, where on earth did you think it was going?
Yeah.
He was clearly all in. He was all in from the beginning. I get it where they were trying to manipulate him to get information about the other settlement. I understand that part, but they had all of that information at this point, right? Like what more could they be getting out of him? Other than, I guess, additional information about Maggie and others, but it still seems like kind of odd, right? Like that suddenly they're like, oh my goodness, yeah, you're falling in love with her. That was a shock. It's like, no, there's no shock to that part. No.
And they were privy, I guess, to all the radio calls, which is how they know
all
like
this.
they know at least one side of it.
So this is another question I was struggling with, or piece I was struggling with. Like, if they have this much information in the radio calls, one would guess, because we're not privy to everything that him and quote unquote Stephanie talk about, but enough that, I mean, Max is a pretty prominent member of this community. She has enough interaction with Hornsby and others where it would be really shocking that they wouldn't recognize her voice or recognize some of the details that she's sharing with him. If they know enough to create this Stephanie avatar, basically, out of these conversations.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was the other part that I was just having a hard time, because this Shira person, who turns out to be some kind of agent or part of the Hornsby's PR team or whatever you want to call it.
Are they a PR team or a bunch of assassins?
I don't know.
It's hard
Assassins,
to tell.
who knows? But to build a character like this, it's not like you're hearing it one time on this broadcast. You have to retain all this information, because it's not just this isn't just like rough sketches of a character. She has built this character and has to basically use all the information she supposedly learned from these broadcasts to trick Eugene. And he's not a person that isn't going to forget those details, because he's a little, this is one of the things he does. He retains these details verbatim, these conversations with Stephanie. And so that I was having a hard time finding. I didn't find it plausible. And it also felt like a really strange way to get the information, because like once they kind of have him in his clutches or have them in this community, he's a pretty easy target, even not using Stephanie, or at least that's how I feel. He thinks he's being subtle. That
entire scene at the end with him and Hornsby, where he just like does exposition for like
Right.
just can't stop himself. You're like, yeah, this guy is a total easy mark for
Right. Like,
collecting information.
so it doesn't feel like they even had to go through such a like
It does feel a little
intricate,
elaborate. Yeah.
intricate and elaborate plan to trick Eugene, because even in the beginning, he was the one that basically was more all in than anybody else about this community. All because of Stephanie and whatever. And they, so to create this kind of a character or an agent just felt kind of odd. Um, and I did like, I mean, the things I did like about this episode, and maybe it is supposed to be ridiculous and kind of like hammed up, and that's kind of how it reads. It's supposed to be kind of like a film noir. That's how it's filmed. There's this mystery because like after he tells Stephanie he loves her, suddenly she disappears, and we see a lot of like different pieces of that. I mean, we see that she's like desperately trying to pack and get away.
While he's outside the door. And I have a problem with that scene too. And it's a small thing, but she
Okay.
had all day to pack and get out of her
Yeah, like
apartment.
why now?
Why is she doing it now?
Like why wouldn't she just immediately do it as soon as he left,
Because
right?
she didn't go to work, right?
Right.
She has other people there who could have been helping her, like Calhoun, who was clearly in the building, but she hasn't even like packed a suitcase by whatever time it is by the time Eugene gets there, which is probably like 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Which I just was like, okay. I mean, it makes for a cooler scene when he's pounding on the door, and then they kind of slowly pan through the apartment, and you hear the sound of movement, and you're like, is it a struggle? Is she a zombie? No, she's just packing a suitcase.
Right. I know. It was like it's sort of dramatic for just packing a suitcase. Um, and we also have we get it, and this is also like reveals on other levels too. Not this is sort of like the episode where we already know that there's some darker stuff within the community. We've seen definitely the different levels of you know their caste system basically and their social hierarchy. Um, but this is the one where we see it a little bit more at work, that there's like truly a disinformation campaign for Eugene. It's like telling him, oh no, these things are not what you think they are. He finds these quote unquote clues that the guy isn't a plumber. And
I mean, his
there
crazy wall is right on. Like, he's not wrong about any of that stuff.
no, not at all. But then you also have Connie and Kelly out there basically doing things that to me are incredibly dangerous. Connie, of all people, has been a reporter before. She seems to know Tyler and her family and has an idea of how corrupt they are. And yet, she and Kelly are not subtly at all digging for information that is clear that people do not want to have out in the open. And they have a very open argument with the editor that Connie's working with that. And the editor is like, oh no, we have to run the story the way that they tell us to. And to me, it's like, why are they still letting Connie and Kelly run around then? It seems a little bit strange to me that they're kind of giving so much freedom to Eugene, to Kelly and Connie, and to others if they're really trying to head this off, because ultimately they represent like an outside threat to the Commonwealth, because they are basically questioning the status quo. And you've also got Rosita.
Let me address the journalism thing first. So in that conversation with the editor and Connie, they're both wrong, frankly. Like, the editor is like, we're just gonna run the press, like paraphrase the governor's press releases. That's going to be our newspaper content. That's a terrible take for an editor to have. And I don't even we don't really know to what extent these guys are like a state-run newspaper, or if they actually are, like printing as if like they are the Fifth Estate or whatever.
Okay, it doesn't feel like they are. I guess
it doesn't at this point. And when you do see a front page later, it's the story that Connie has written about Mercer, and it's just a puff piece, like propaganda. Actually, you can't really see it, but I froze the screen and flipped it upside down, and then I could read the first half of the article because I'm weird that way.
That was great. That's great. I did not do that. So what did the article say?
It's just like, oh, it's like our soldiers went out and fought a bunch of zombies, and they were victorious because of Mercer, who's like this great leader and hero of the people. So they're writing like really puff pieces about the establishment, and that's Connie's article. Like she wrote that, but her take in that meeting with the editor is also like, hey, there's something going on here with Tyler Davis. This is enough to confront the governor in public over. And I'm just like, I mean, that is a really different sort of radical take for journalists, just journalism too. Like, it's one thing to doorstep people, and that happens in like, salacious media where they're like going for the big, I don't know, like tabloid stuff, I guess, like where you're waiting outside a member of government's house to like surprise interview them. I think that's not showing great journalistic integrity. Like, get some more information first, because all she really has is a hunch, right? And nobody's corroborating her hunch, so she has to do more work. And so, but for the editor then to be like, no, we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to run press releases. They're both absolutely wrong in this conversation. So I don't know. I guess I wanted to hear somebody with a right opinion in the room at the newspaper. It didn't feel like anybody did have one that I thought was right.
No, it did not.
But also, I guess, okay. And then you were making a point about like letting everybody from, Alexandria, et cetera, like run around and do whatever they want because they're a danger to the community. And I don't get the sense yet, at least, that the Commonwealth is organized enough to like have an intelligence mechanism. I guess that's kind of what Hornsby's PR team of ninjas is like an intelligence mechanism in a way.
Yeah, I guess.
But it just feels, I don't know enough still about the Commonwealth. So while these guys are probably a little bit of like flies in the ointment for the most part, except for Rosita, it seems like she's kind of really marching in tune or in time with the rest. I guess, yeah, I don't get the sense that the Commonwealth would be threatened by anything that these guys are doing, even Eugene, because Hornsby defangs him so easily at the end of the episode. That was the scene on the stairs where I was like, yeah, Hornsby should just kill this guy. But instead he actually does something cooler by completely deflating him and making him think that nobody's going to believe you anyway because you signed this piece of paper.
Yeah, and we see a lot more of him in this because we see him also interacting with Carol, and bringing. But again, like they're showing their hand a lot here, and so he's basically showing her a little bit of the dirty laundry or like just how things run, which is like, they go out to the opium farm. And
what a weird way to show how the place runs by going outside of the Commonwealth.
Right.
And I was really hoping that's part of the story would be about those farms that we've been wanting to see. And it is about a farm, but it's an external farm. And I don't understand why they would need to deal with this rogue element, which is the name of the episode, but I don't think that's who they're talking about with this Moto dude. Why can't they just grow poppies inside the Commonwealth? They must have massive agriculture. They could just put some people on poppy growing.
Well, I was convinced that when they were going outside, we were going to see some of the things that we suspected were going on, which was that there was people basically toiling away, and a very small number of people actually get to live in luxury in the way in safety in the way the Commonwealth was. And I kind of thought that was the purpose of being outside the walls, was that these people who are actually providing all of this security and food and drugs for hospital use and all that were actually in a lot of danger and not getting the benefit of this. But that's not what they did. Instead, we just see this kind of weird and not very many people that we see, actually. Just we see representatives of like 3 or 4 people. And they're showing that Carol is like not necessarily trusted, but she's being entrusted to do certain things in this community in a way like
she's being used.
Well, of course she's being used because she wants to get surgery for her loved one, which is, and but I do think that it shows a piece of Hornsby's personality. We're getting to see a lot more of what he has going on, and he's a lot more than just the mouthpiece, which, and he is definitely looking to make himself more powerful, and so that he's got a lot of irons in the fire on that point.
Yeah, I feel like the whole field trip is just a way for him to get Carol to trust him more. Like he's
Oh
still
yeah.
trying to build this rapport. It almost feels like he knew exactly what was going on at the poppy farm before he had Carol like read the between the lines. I don't know. Maybe I'm overestimating now his like capacity for deception. But I just had a part of me was like, oh yeah, this was all just like rigged to make Carol feel like he's going to make the moral choice.
Right. But you've got a lot of people, including Hornsby, but also Mercer, saying things like, and to some extent, like saying things like, okay, this is the way that the system is, and you've kind of got to like go along to just keep these things that we have been able to preserve. Do you really want to live in this other world? And it's worth giving up these things to be able to live in this way. Or like, there's a lot, and they repeat this line a lot about everybody having a role or a job to do, and you have to play that role. And, if you don't, things are going to fall apart. And that's like the theme in like a lot of these, like with these characters from the Commonwealth, that like the quote unquote greater good, right, is worth the sacrifices of freedom, of speech, of other things. I mean, it's not a very subtle theme, but there it is. And like I do think that this episode shows a lot of that, sort of the shine is off the rose, or the bloom is off the rose rather, and they're seeing sort of the sort of less savory elements of what it is like to live in this community and what the community might have sacrificed in order to kind of preserve these things. And in general, like how do you keep power over a bunch of people, and it's like a few people sort of holding that power, right? um and you've also got in this episode, you have Princess, and she's kind of advising Eugene, but it's interesting because it's like there's moments where she's like, okay, I'm going to help you, I'm all in, but then there's moments where she is also worried about losing things, and she even says like, and this sort of gives you kind of an idea about some of the psychology and the tools that Hornsby uses and the Commonwealth uses. But at one point she was like, oh, I have a job and I was going to get a pet, so I don't know if I can risk helping you, Eugene, because
But she still does. Like she
she does.
says that, but it's not very difficult to persuade her to
No,
climb
not
up
at
the
all.
hill.
But I think that just her saying that is just sort of an example of where a lot of the people in this community come from,
Well,
and how
yeah. And
they
Princess
try
has
to.
come the furthest of anybody we
Right.
know on this cast. Like she was just by herself, losing
Yep.
her mind, and
Yep.
now she has everything that she has. And so that probably is a tough thing for her to risk. Did you get a sense of what Eugene does for a living in the community?
No, I really don't.
Is he still the
Not
only one we don't know what the hell he does
We don't
every day?
really know what he does. And so there's that. But they're all doing like kind of weird things, and there you go.
But they're doing such different things that do put them into these different casts that I want to know what his job is. I mean, now he's like tainted. He's like an outcast for sure because of now he's definitely on the wrong side of Hornsby. But
Yeah,
I
but
was like, what is he?
you would think though that his technical expertise would be of use, and I
Yeah.
feel like they don't know about it because of something that Hornsby says, um, and Tyler says when they go to visit later on, when they're like later on they like have a like it's almost like it's like a hidden thing. So something is revealed later about the fact that I don't think that they really know what Eugene's talents are. So
Well, we'll find out. I hope that they like just reveal that either, yeah, he's like working at a comic book shop or something really weird.
I mean, yeah. So it's just kind of odd that we don't know. And at the very end of this episode, after it has the full betrayal, Hornsby's basically like, "Yeah, you already signed this thing, and everybody's gonna think you're crazy." And he's really hurt and upset. He talks to Shira / Stephanie a little bit,
But
but like it's all done here. And
I don't think
um
she doesn't say anything to him. She just kicks
no,
him.
she just kicks him, which is like, okay. And he, he's heartbroken. He's heartbroken, and also, but now on full alert. And there's a moment where you kind of think he's going to go along with exactly what Hornsby had said, which he's going to stay quiet and not tell anybody. But of course, we know that's not going to be the case. He's going to tell the people that he cares about.
Well, I mean, by the end of this episode, he hasn't told anybody, and by the end of the next episode, he hasn't told anybody. He almost tells Rosita,
Almost.
but then he
No, but
tells her, "Oh, she broke up with me." Like that's
right,
that's as
right.
far as he takes it.
Yeah, yeah. But like,
Are you telling me later down the road he's going to be revealing
well,
Hornsby's
it's
a snake?
Eugene. It's Eugene. We know.
So you are, yeah, okay. Um,
And anyway, but at the very end, he's approached by Max, who basically is like, I was the woman in contact
it's a
with you.
me.
It's me. And they kind of get into the next
Yeah, that
goes.
like leads into the next episode. But in this one, there were a couple of other things I wanted to talk about.
Oh, cool.
Number one, Connie and Kelly are doing a lot of ASL sign
Yep.
language without subtitles, and I don't know
I
why the show is
know.
doing this, and I don't like it because I want to know what's going on. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
it's just like a treat for people who can speak or read ASL, but I can't, and it looks like they're having actual real conversations, and I'm not
Well,
getting much out of them. I don't know. It was
I
weird.
thought it was a way to kind of keep whatever was happening, whatever they're talking about, because I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe there are other people in the community that can speak ASL, or no ASL. And
You mean in the Commonwealth? Yeah.
yeah. But I felt like it was deliberate so that we know that they have this kind of secret line and things going. Because there's also moments, I mean, there, like Kelly, when she has to like translator when she's interpreting for Connie, there's moments when Kelly's like, oh my God, you really want me to
You
say
sure?
that?
You sure you want me to say this? Yeah, I just felt like that was an interesting choice by the production. I don't know if they're going to keep doing that, and and I'm also trying to remember, like Kelly and Connie have often talked in ASL before, and I don't know if it was always usually subtitled or if we only ever really.
They did subtitle it here and there, but for the most part, it hasn't been as extensive as this.
Oh, what
So
are you eating?
I'm eating a chocolate
Oh,
because it's Easter
tomorrow. Happy
soon.
Easter, everybody.
Mm.
Delish. So that was my first thing that I wanted to talk about, and I guess it's not a huge deal, but it was notable.
It's a salted caramel chocolate.
Oh my gosh,
Awesome.
delicious!
I know, right?
The second one was when Eugene is first approaching Calhoun, the plumber, quote unquote plumber, and he is talking about Stephanie's address, and he says 1634 Racine. I immediately perked my ears up, as would most people, I think, from the city of Chicago, because Racine is a Chicago street, and it is a street that has been used in films about Chicago. And in this case, 1634 Racine is the number of the house that Sean Connery is standing in front of, or in the movie Untouchables, because that is apparently his house for his character Malone in Untouchables. So this was a weird Easter egg. Maybe they were
nice.
like trying to chase down.
I did not catch that, but well done.
I rarely pick up on Easter eggs, but when you say clearly a Chicago address, although it should have had a north or a south in it, but it didn't, I guess, in the film either. So that was maybe them trying to inject more of that noir feel. Untouchables isn't really a noir film, but I guess because they wear hats, you can interpret it that way. So 1634 Racine is where Sean Connery's character lived in Untouchables. When Eugene is talking to Princess about the cabal of shadowy agents, and one of them lights a cigarette, and he's like, and there was a mastermind. I'm like, that is clearly Hornsby. That is his silhouette.
Yep.
That is actually his face when he goes through the door. Like, were you just too drunk or something? Like, why couldn't you recognize that was Hornsby right there?
I mean, it was clearly him, but
it's clearly him.
Anyway, but yeah, I mean, what was that? What else did you want to talk about?
I'm trying to remember if Mercer, after his conversation with Connie and Kelly, where they're like, "Who do you really trust everybody that you work for?" he goes to the hospital in this episode, right? And he's looking for Tyler Durden,
Yes. We should talk
and
about this.
he has been moved. And the nurse that he talks to is so evasive. He's like, "Where's the
Yeah.
man in room, M12?" And the guards who were with him. She just looks at him and says, "There is no one in room M12." He's like, "Yes, I know that. Where is he? Nobody can move him without my authorization." And she goes, "Apparently they can." And I'm just like, "Oh God, he's just asking you where they went. You can't even say like 2 hours ago they all left. You can't even be like that kind." I don't know.
Well, and she's very threatening too.
Well, it's just like it's evasive and unflinching, and yeah, she feels like part of the establishment, like a Hornsby agent in that scene.
Yep, she
And we've
does.
never seen her before, but it was just like, wow, that's a strange take.
Hmm.
Another thing with Mercer in this episode, I don't get real leadership vibes off of his character. He's a little too chill with people, like Daryl. He's been helpful to Daryl. He's given him advice, but uh, and in a scene where he's like bailing out a couple of his soldiers, on that mission that Kelly and Connie were out covering. There's a cool shot of him chopping like an axe through a zombie's head and saving a guy, but he doesn't even offer to help him up. He doesn't say anything to him. He just gives him a look and then walks
Yep.
away.
Yeah, it's really weird.
It's so I feel like a general, which is his rank apparently. First of all, should not be getting his hands dirty. Second of all, what is he like? He's not talking to his soldiers almost ever. You barely hear him actually address people. Once in a while, he's like, "Get on the ready line" or something. Certainly in this next episode, he gives people orders about marching and stuff. But I don't. Right so far, I'm not getting real leadership vibes from him. I want to hear him barking orders more and being more of a military leader. He went to West Point, right?
He did, and I mean, they keep obviously touting him as the face of safety in this whole Commonwealth. Like there's posters of him. There's like he's the representation. They bring him out to like socialize at these events. He holds a very specific place in this community, but I couldn't tell whether this is a little bit deliberate in that he doesn't want to show as much leadership because then it will threaten maybe those that could be threatened by it. Like so part of me was wondering if that was a deliberate choice on his end of things to just stay kind of, I don't want to say play dumb, but that's a little bit of what it seems to be. Like it almost feels like he is playing his role, quote unquote, which again comes up over and over again. And part of his role is just being the muscle and being silent. But in order to lead, you have to do some leadership things, right?
Yeah, I feel like this is a script problem more than or I don't know, maybe the guy playing Mercer is like, how about instead of helping the guy up and asking him if he's okay, I just sneer at him and walk away. It reads very weird to me that like
and if
your
like
commanding officer would behave that way.
And if he was like this, I don't know how much loyalty he would be able to command, right?
No, it read very strange, but that's fairly minor also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we do hear, I mean, at least through Max, that when Mercer discovered that it was her, and it shows this little sort of nerdy thing where, like when Mercer discovered it was her doing this, he basically told her to be quiet and like that she couldn't see Eugene or couldn't communicate with him. And and she kind of turns things back on Eugene, which was like, how could you believe that was me after all of our conversations?
That's not very fair, right?
And again, there was this whole part that just kept sort of niggling in my mind was, again, how much of all of these communications did these people listen so that Shira was able to build this flawless like character to trick Eugene. But anyway, and they, do the flashback with the ice cream, which again read as so bizarre.
Why do you think Mercer says to Max when he discovers her radio and confronts her about being the comms leak? He's like, "This is super dangerous for me and my family." Like he means her too.
Yeah.
But he clearly feels like his life is in danger too. And I guess we'll find out And maybe I can't ask you what you think that means because maybe you know because you've watched ahead.
Well, okay,
But
one would
it's
think that,
it's to me it's a loaded sort of
what
statement
I would
there.
say is that I mean, it's just sort of like, I think it's more that the Commonwealth is operating in this very specific way, and there's a lot of unseen things and politics happening. I don't know completely yet what he's talking about, other than, again, these things where, like, we um there's a lot of things going on with this government that involve control of communication, um, and all sorts of things. I mean, I think in this case, part of me was thinking that they were worried about something like, say, the Saviors or somebody coming and attacking them like that, maybe. But and then that would, I would imagine that if they do have those protocols in place, there's going to be repercussions for basically telling people where they are. But you know, and that's not necessarily a wrong instinct to have, as we've seen with the whispers and the saviors and things like that. Like, you don't really necessarily want to be
Yeah,
revealing locations to people, and that makes sense to me, but it felt like there was a little bit more going on there. um and I
they were
mean,
both pretty
we've
careful though.
seen
They never actually said where they were, or they said which states they were in. I think
right,
eventually was like that's fairly benign as far
right,
as
right.
OPSEC goes. So they, yeah, like sure, should she have been in hot water? Sure, she was making unpermitted radio calls, and I guess you wouldn't want that happening no matter where you live, right?
But
But
we've also seen, actually, with some of the things that that Tyler had said, was like that, basically because he screwed up, everything got stripped away from him and his family,
yeah,
right?
right.
So maybe that's what he's talking about too, is that, oh, one mess up and then suddenly you're stripped of all of the privilege and all of the niceties of this society. So there's that too.
Yeah,
Um,
I still feel like Tyler is a mystery. I mean, obviously Connie is still chasing down what's why he was like on the, he was put up for promotion by Mercer. Was is kind of her like whole like why would he have been demoted and made a nobody? And so we do have to get to the bottom of that too. So there are a couple of good threads in the
right,
Commonwealth, but I at the same time as I'm watching any of these episodes right now, I am wondering like why them? How did they get this far
right, right.
when places like Alexandria, Hilltop are scraping by? Like
Right.
what did they?
And we
Yeah,
haven't seen enough of what their infrastructure is. We haven't seen enough. Again, I really want to see how this is all being supported.
yeah,
Is it a Hunger Games situation, which is kind of where it feels like they're going with it.
could be.
But and we even see such a, like, especially in this episode, the lucky ones, um, with it just, they have sort of like, they're comparing and contrasting the communities. Like, Tyler's going out to take a look at, sorry, Pamela is going out to take a look at the different settlements, so Oceanside and in Hilltop and Alexandria. And they, especially like Hilltop, is like burned out, and at least Oceanside looks like it's still kind of functional, and Alexandria is still functional, although both Alexandria and Hilltop look just like kind of devastated, right? Like, they just
Yeah,
are still rebuilding. There's, that all, and when you compare this to where they have come from, in the Commonwealth, it feels like a third world country, basically, like a developing country. And these are people that have been out there and been out there a long time. And so even the conversation between Pamela and Maggie, and Pamela, and Aaron, just about, oh, risk. And she seems like, really, like, anytime a walker appears, she seems like totally like full of distaste. Like, how dare, like, your communities are just so trashy to allow this stuff to be walking around. You know what I mean? Like,
when we first went to the Commonwealth and our heroes were on like dead cleaning duty, there were, I don't know, I have no sense of where that was in the Commonwealth, but there were walkers there too, and
right,
her son almost got eaten by
right,
rando walkers. So yeah, I felt like the fact that like Aaron, is perceives, and Hornsby are both perceiving that one zombie in Alexandria is like this big red flag. I'm like, come on,
Yeah.
Like the show hasn't done the work to make me think that that's true at this point.
Right. And even when, even when Hilltop does get sort of like there's walkers, it's more like, okay, well, this is just taking care of business. This is what you have to do in this world these days. This
Yeah,
isn't anything new, right?
yeah.
So um, so I feel like her tour of the settlements, and then there is the piece which is still kind of a mystery to me. And despite the fact that I have binged this, I still don't fully understand why they even care about these settlements
Thank
at
you.
all.
Yeah, I have no idea.
And I don't know why. I mean, she makes some comment to Hornsby about it, but it's still very strange to me, like that they would even want to deal with this because it feels like it's far out and spraying their resources. And they make this comment several times, and so it makes me like, is there something? I feel like there's something that hasn't been revealed yet about why they want this, right?
Yeah,
um
because no matter what, if even if all three of these communities come into the fold, which is kind of like the whole point of this episode, is that they don't, or at least not all of them want to. Um, they're like the Commonwealth would be paying for them forever. It would be like they would be not be profitable. They would not be self-sufficient, and that would just be a drain on their resources. I think you just kind of said that, but
yeah.
it just doesn't feel like there would be a payoff for the Commonwealth in any time in the near future.
And look, they
Yeah,
do, I feel like they do a good job of like, okay, you could see once, because the Commonwealth is demonstrating that they do have these resources and is inviting people to go and do this. And this is the thing, like all these people that have been kind of out in the wilderness are getting like, and they're just like tired and they just kind of want to go and they're like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to dig in and I'm going to go there instead of like kind of like scraping out an existence here. You can understand why people do that, though some of this it seems a little weird to me because they are rebuilding, and all of these communities have had interactions with other established groups that have all been very negative. I feel like the skepticism of the Commonwealth would be much higher than we're kind of seeing. And maybe it's because some time has passed, and clearly time has passed here. So maybe there's a lot more like relationship building and things that they're doing to build the trust here. But I still feel like I don't know how many people would actually go, especially the old stalwarts. It feels a little odd to me.
yeah. I would just put it down to exhaustion
Maybe.
of having to do the run out and kill the zombies. Every like two, 3 times a day probably. Just be it would be enough to grind you down. And it's been a decade of this lifestyle. And like Diane, when she's like, I can't handle it anymore. I'm like, I get it. Like you need a break.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
she's been in it, we know she's like, and I think that's why they chose her as to be one of the people to throw it in. And they're
Yeah.
encouraging Maggie to accept the leadership. And look, I got to say that as much as I sometimes disagree with Maggie, her conversation with Pamela, um, and how Pamela views leading, and Maggie's just like, how can you like kind of live in like have things that other people don't and flaunt that, and that's just not my thing, and everybody has to share equally and that kind of thing. And Pamela's like, well, they expected of me. And there's like a pretty big debate over obviously leadership styles and like capitalism versus socialism. And
Mm-hmm.
but Pamela is really kind of she's just kind of a gross person, and they play her that way, and this woman plays that role really well. I mean, she's even dressed in a very aristocratic kind of hunting
Her pith helmet.
outfit,
Yeah.
her pith helmet. I mean, it could not be more like it was like sort of like
She's
a,
on safari in the zombie apocalypse. Like
yeah,
it's
like it could not be more like colonialism at
yeah.
its peak, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not subtle at all. So, and by contrast, Maggie's looking very dirty and ragged, and everybody kind of is. And so, and they do this deliberately. I mean, you even see with the Commonwealth versus any of these denizens, like the Commonwealth people look very well fed and clean and all that. So, yeah. So I feel like this is again just a big mystery, though, why that they want to sort of get these communities in the fold, and why they're so angry at being thwarted still seems mysterious to me.
I don't know. Like, yeah, that is true. We do also find out in this episode a few times they talk about that there's 50,000 people in the Commonwealth, right? So there's this huge community out there, and this is on the level of a CRM size city, which they've been knocking out during the World Beyond, or trying to. I think it's just Portland and the CR itself now. But 50,000 people in the Commonwealth, again, we still really need to see behind the curtain to believe that there's a community that big.
Well, and remember, I mean, the CRM has like the reason why they're like sort of taking out some of these communities is a resource issue, right?
Right. It was about sustainability and how Omaha was a big drain on their resources. But I guess the Commonwealth is self-sufficient and then some, because it can afford to prop up other communities, which is what they're kind of proposing to do. Yeah. Which is crazy.
And this is the episode where as they're walking around, Hornsby, I think, is the one that says something like, "Oh, well, how did you do this? Because you don't have an engineer, you don't have people with that knowledge," which obviously Eugene does have that knowledge, right?
Oh, I see.
And so he makes that comment in this episode.
And I like the fact that they went back. Pamela Milton is looking at a picture of Deanna and her husband, who was an architect, whose idea Alexandria was, right? It was right. Kind of his baby, talking about how she knew her and yada, yada. And Daryl makes some nice comments about how like she saved them, she brought them in, etc. But like when Hornsby's like, "Hey, how did you build all this? You didn't have an engineer." I was like, well, yeah, but they had for a couple episodes, at least, Alexandria did have some well-educated, engineer types.
And also, but it's interesting because they know that Eugene has some technical expertise, so they're not going to talk about that. But Eugene definitely was one of the people that helped, keep all this stuff going.
Yeah, he fixed up their solar.
Yeah,
they give all the credit to Maggie here, or Georgie.
True.
Which is, she did have that book, but I felt like, it was more Eugene before.
But part of me is wondering, like, if they're covering and they don't tell, why they're not telling, because why wouldn't you just say, "Oh yeah, Eugene helped out," but they don't do that at all. So I find that to be kind of interesting. Maybe we'll see more about that later. But anyway, and then also in this episode, we've got the whole Carol saga for Ezekiel to have his surgery moved up.
He's super mad about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that interested in that. I just want him to get better.
Right.
As a selfish viewer, I just want Ezekiel to get fixed. Yep. And I don't want there to be drama between Carol and Ezekiel. I kind of want them to be a happy couple.
Me too. And she's basically like, "Okay, I did this." And I mean, look, I think, he's him, so it doesn't shock me that this is his reaction. But also I think he's worried about what Carol might have done in order to move him up in line, which he's right to worry about that. And so
far she hasn't done anything terribly illegal, just got some wine and right, gave some advice.
But from his point of view,
he doesn't know.
He doesn't know. And he also knows that the way that this whole thing works feels pretty dirty. So I think, we'll probably see more about that. So anyway, I think was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
There's a couple of really weird scenes in this.
Oh, I think we should talk about like so the Eugene and Max thing, they end up kind of sort of reconciling, or at least come to some kind of.
What is there? I mean, I don't get why she's mad at him.
No, me neither.
And it's because he apparently said something nasty to her in the alley. All he said was, "Your brother hates me and I can't handle this. I've got to go."
Right.
And she's like, "Yeah, that was really."
And he still felt like betrayed because, she knew that he was being, she knew that he was being sort of led along the primrose path. And, I don't think he's totally out of line for being upset about it. And then they do they do show like that interest in each other, and it's sort of rekindling whatever chemistry and stuff that they had all over the
Mm-hmm.
thing. And they talk about that fondly. And again, it brought to mind the fact that he remembers exactly what was said. So it feels, again, even more ridiculous that Shira would have been able to fake this.
Yeah.
But he does make a good point where it's like, you know, he's like, no, you know, most women aren't interested in me. So I just kind of was relieved that she was like not running away. So that was kind of sad, but actually a very sweet Eugene thing to happen.
You know, the contrast of his relationship with Max with alongside just the casual cruelty of Hornsby's PR assassin team.
Yeah.
I really hope that we do get to see Shira get kicked in the stomach.
Yeah, I agree.
Like that was really like, and her like look at him where she doesn't say anything to him after she does it, but she's not looking at him with anything close to affection. And you're just like, God damn, that was ice cold.
But it's not even like it's not like he was a jerk. It's not like she faked liking him. He actually did have affection for her. Like, I don't know why she would like be such a beast to him. And she even like says something like, or says to Hornsby that his book is good. And that's like the thing that I think is funny is that Max is so offended by the fact that he shared all this.
She read the book. Yeah.
So, you know, I just don't know why Shira would be such a jerk, basically. It's like, because sure, it was a mission, but it's not like he was some kind of, I don't know. It just it felt kind of strange to me.
The fact that the mission didn't have an exit strategy was to be like, clearly they're not that good at what they do. Like they're good at the, I guess, you know, pretending to be Stephanie for long enough that he bought in, but they should have had some sort of way to get her out of there before it went to the inevitable place it was going.
Right, because they could have kind of disappeared her or something long before it got to this point. One thing I think we didn't get to talk about was the list, right?
Oh yeah, that list got put under the door in another ASL on no subtitle scene.
Yeah.
But Tyler Davis's name was on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it was a lot of names on that list. It was like 3 columns of small handwriting.
Yeah.
So whether those are people who've disappeared or who are confirmed dead or who knows, they're just on the list of people. And who is this mole? Is it Mercer? Probably.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. You know the answer to that. I don't. I'm speculating that it's Mercer. Speaking of Mercer, in this episode, The Lucky Ones, there's a scene of like the zombies attacking Hilltop, and the CR soldiers, not CR, Commonwealth soldiers, do this insane firing line toward the friendlies.
Yep.
And Mercer's out there with them, and it's just no, I don't want to see that.
Nope.
Even though they're trying to get across like, look how precise they are. I'm like, no,
precise, and this is this easy. And I'm like, yep, nope.
These guys are running around fighting zombies. You don't shoot at them.
Nope.
And Mercer, like, you know, stands up and is like, see how great this is.
Like, no, right?
That was bad. And then at the end of this episode, you also have Hornsby gets permission from Milton to like continue to pursue these colonies for no good reason, because she was kind of set against it a moment ago.
And she makes some comment about him wanting power, him wanting something.
Yeah, it's hard to let go of your ambition, and you've been like this since you were a little boy. Like they've known each other, right? Like there's a long history between these two. And he has said to Carol in the previous episode, I proved my worth to the Miltons long ago. So pre-apocalypse, they've known each other a long time. And he goes out into the woods and like starts shooting zombies with his little 6-shooter. And this actor is good. He can do some crazy face. He can do some psycho face. And Aaron is appropriately off-put by this too. Even though Aaron is like, I don't love how much Aaron is like sucking up to the Commonwealth because he really wants Alexandria to be let in.
Yeah.
But you know, obviously that's just his reality. Like when he's like telling people to cover up broken windows at the beginning of the tour. And then he's like, "Oh, so we're good, right? We can still come into the." I don't know. It was just I'm liking that part of it. It's just interesting that also it's interesting that Aaron is the leader of Alexandria because everybody else left.
I know he's by default.
He's the only character
It's
with
him and his mace arm. Hey, you have a mace arm. Lead our community.
yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen next. I think I was making projections about Sebastian and Daryl last time. I still think that those are maybe on the table, but I don't know what's next. Obviously, we know that Daryl and Maggie are going to have a standoff in front of Hilltop at some point because we saw that scene as a flash forward.
Yep.
But where could this go from here? I don't know. H.A. Conrad does.
So our last when we talked about predictions last time was that the Sebastian piece was going to at some point involve Daryl and Mercer. And I can say that we are correct. So so more to come on that. But they couldn't build up something like that without somehow coming clean with it. So we'll see about that. And then I'll try to I'll watch the webisodes from Fear the Walking Dead.
Yeah, let me know your impressions. That's second half of that season's about to air too. For our sins.
Yep. So
but that was these were good episodes. I wanted to keep watching. I'm not surprised that you did. I totally no shade. It was tough not to to get sucked into the story. This is a good story.
Yeah. And this is the thing, the writing and the storytelling, you do want to find out. And even though I do have some obvious criticisms about how certain things are being played out, I also understand where they're coming from and why, and why it's sort of like why it's sort of running this way. But I feel like overall it's pretty tight. It's interesting. I cared enough that I wanted to continue watching. Right.
Yeah.
But I will say that I didn't get too much further into the season or this third of the season. But already I'm like, oh, we're gonna probably have to wait for some of this for the last part of it.
Yeah.
So it's, and when does the last part happen?
Oh boy. That's I'll have to look it up on the wiki. I don't even know that it's been advertised because are they running them at the same time as Fear the Walking Dead?
I don't know. So we shall have to see what happens. But
they just stopped running on April 10th was the last episode. That was episode 16, but there's going to be 20 something, aren't there?
Yeah, and I know that at least for some of our heroes, at least in terms of they're like they've been putting stuff up on Instagram about their farewell and again the spin-off projects and things like that. So so I know that they, at least some of them, have also wrapped up. So we shall see. And I mean, it's like, the spin-off with some of the characters like Daryl and Carol and Negan and Maggie, that's all gonna air down the line, right? Down the road. So
Carol and Daryl are coming in 2023.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know when in the year that's going to be, but and Tales of the Walking Dead, I think, has probably been in production maybe a little bit, although they've still been doing casting announcements. But the Negan spinoff was only just announced this last 6-month period or so. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it's hard to say. We don't have a crystal ball into this, into how they're doing stuff, but they have 3 shows still that they're producing. So the reality of having Walking Dead all year round is probably still going to be a thing in 2023, I assume.
Right. So anyway, I think that's all I have to say for now.
That's about it. We missed a couple of probably little things here and there, but overall, these are still fun. And I can't wait to talk about more of them with you next time we get together. So, and if you guys want to let us know what you think about this part of season 11, give us a holler. We're on Twitter at ReanimatedPcast. You can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And our show notes are online at Reanimated Podcast. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Ciao.